So guys, what if Naruto was son of Yonko, sisters of the Boundless Opportunities movie? You said they wouldn't know we were coming. Naruto shouted to his elder sister over the sound of cannons and explosions. My exact words were that they should have no idea we are coming. You know how these smaller islands are, all it takes is one person with loose lips, Kushina replied as she reloaded her pistols, sending a grimace toward her little brother. What a cop-out answer, Kurasu isn't gonna be happy about this, Naruto complained, getting a light shove on the shoulder from his sister. That's the least of our problems, you go left, he'll go right, we need to cover our troops while they fall back, then you and I can handle it from their right. Kushina asked as she spun the pistols on her fingers and bent her knees slightly to ready to charge. Yeah sure, Naruto called before lunging out of cover toward the marine position surrounding the small fort. The Battle of Sign Island had been going for roughly 3 weeks now, a tiny speck in the North Blue, where the world government had been starting construction on a new shipyard, emphasis on had, the Revolutionary Army had seen a chance and stolen practically everything intended to be used to build the new marine base, and had planned on shuttling it off the island piecemeal, again emphasis on had. The original plan had fallen apart pretty quickly after marine ships had shown up and blown the revolutionary vessels out of the water, effectively trapping the remaining revolutionaries on the island. At least they still had all the building supplies and most of the weaponry and ammunition intended for the marine camp on the island. Not that it actually helped them at all, as long as it was stuck here on Sign, along with Naruto, Kushina, and around 80 revolutionary soldiers. Thankfully Kurasu, the commander of the North Army Group, was headed their way to break them out and retrieve the supplies. His orders had been to hide and hold out until he arrived. That didn't work that well. The Marines zeroed in on their hideout easily enough and from then on began bombarding them with cannons from the largest town on the island. Thankfully they were far enough inland to avoid the bigger guns on the ships. But in trying to simply hide and wait on backup, the revolutionary forces had inadvertently allowed the Marines to dig in and build up a sizable defensive position just outside the largest town on the island. After 3 weeks Kushina realized trying to wait and hide was not going to work. The way things were going, the relief force might not even be able to get to them and get off the island again. The last thing they needed was that damned fort to trap and slowly wipe out the leadership of the North Army. So, realizing that there wasn't much of a choice besides defying their orders to hide, so as the commanding officer of the revolutionary forces on the island, Kushina had chosen to mount a surprise attack against the quickly growing marine fort. Sadly, the surprise part of that plan had seemingly also failed and turned Naruto and Kushina's plan from carefully thought out scenarios to a simple improvise and survive strategy. So that now left the 30 or so revolutionary soldiers that had accompanied them on this attempt, ducking behind trees and rocks where they could, while Naruto and Kushina themselves raced headlong into the withering fire of their enemies' weapons. The pair of redeeds crossed the open ground between the tree line and the wooden palisade of the small fort's walls in remarkable time. The moment they reached the first set of barricades, Kushina pulled the triggers of her pistols, dropping the first 2 Marines in her view. In the second after she fired she had hurled the empty weapons into the face of the largest Marine she could see. The disorder she caused was all the distraction she needed before drawing the whip-like chain off her waist and diving headlong into the remaining Marines. Similarly Naruto had charged into the Marin defenses, leaping easily over the outer palisade they had constructed. He struck out with a kick into the first Marine's face before snapping his arm back and whipping his own chain across the faces of 3 Marines standing in a firing line. Their guns went off. But the pain and sudden blindness from Naruto's strike had made sure that their shots all went wide and one even took out one of their fellow Marines. The rest of the Marines responded properly by launching an attack to avenge their comrades, but soon found themselves outmatched. Naruto's right hand took a black metallic appearance as it caught the blade of a Marine's sword and snapped it in 2 before the rest of Naruto's hands and feet to the same appearance, and he made quick work of the rest of the Marines on this section of their temporary balls. Hockey? Naruto heard one Marine ask in shock. Ain't it something? Naruto asked with a laugh as he slammed a fist into the man's gut, knocking him out of the fight with a single blow. After he dropped the unconscious Marine beside his dead and injured comrades, Naruto took a moment to survey the rest of the fort. It wasn't hard to tell where Kushina was, honestly, she was quite a bit better with the sea stone chains their mother had taught them to make and use. Then again, he did take more after their father. His skill with hockey was far superior to that of Kushina. Not that it mattered here, they should have just done this weeks ago. These small fry were no match for either himself or his sister. Watching her cackle as she laid out another 4 Marines with a crack of her chain only cemented that thought. I kinda thought someone worthwhile might be around here, Naruto glumly said as he hopped down from the defenses into the inner area of the fort. By now Kushina was mopping up the last of her opponents, and Naruto realized that she had definitely taken on more opponents than him by going through what amounted to the front gate of the place. She'd never let him hear the end of it, he was sure. Kushina, he said as he approached to make sure she knew he wasn't some foolhardy marine trying to get the drop on her. Oh good, you made it in, what, did you have to climb the wall? She asked. Har, well actually kinda, Naruto replied. Kushina opened her mouth to continue teasing her little brother, only for both siblings to lean back away from one another to avoid a set of bullets fired by two marine lieutenants crouching against the docks beside a rowboat jam-packed with marine reinforcements from the Navy ships just offshore. Leading the charge was a tall female captain with arms just slightly too long and corded with thick muscle. Oh, she's mine, Kushina immediately called dibs before charging ahead. Damn it. Naruto shouted, wanting the obviously better fight for himself. At least the captain had brought plenty of grunts to take his boredom out on. The same could be said for the two unlucky lieutenants that had tossed their rifles aside and drawn blades to join their men. Just as Kushina met the captain in combat, Naruto impacted the grunts. They barely put up any resistance as he pivoted around them and snapped out punches and kicks that dropped the marines like flies. Just as he had removed half of the attacking grunts, the lieutenants made it to him. The first slashed out with his sword only for Naruto to easily dodge it, the second was less lucky, his strike being caught in Naruto's chain and the blade entangled before being ripped from his hands. Really? Even you officers are nothing much to worry about, then again this is one of the blues, even if it is the North. Naruto bragged and complained at the same time till he had to dodge the sudden stab from a push knife the previously disarmed lieutenant had pulled from his boot. Oh, you would have had me with that if I was just some grunt man, Naruto mocked as he danced around the other lieutenant's sword strikes. But the snap of his chain, the tangled sword swung out in a slashing motion, cleaving through a few unlucky grunts and narrowly missing the two lieutenants. The redeeted revolutionary officer clicked his teeth together in disappointment at missing his targets. He once more lamented at his sister always being better with the chains. Whipping the chain around his own torso halfway, Naruto spun in place while dropping below another attempted strike by the sword-armed lieutenant. His aim was perfect, and the chain suddenly wrapped around the lieutenant's sword arm before spinning up and slicing the captured sword through his neck cleanly. There was a brief pause in the fight after that display, that is to say the marines paused in shock at the sudden fountain of blood erupting from their comrade's neck. Naruto however remained in motion and had seized the second lieutenant by the wrist and with a sudden yank had pulled the joint loose, dislocating the man's shoulder. He didn't suffer the pain long though, as Naruto hauled the howling officer overhead and slammed him down on top of his skull, finishing him quickly. By now Kushina had also finished her opponents. The woman's long arms that had an additional joint now possessed even more sharp bends than they should have, and her neck bent awkwardly to match. The handful of remaining marines began to back away to flee, only for them to stop as they saw their ships in the waters nearby be overrun and destroyed by newly arrived revolutionary ships. As the marines lost all hope and dropped their weapons and threw up their hands in surrender, the siblings largely ignored them to take in the sight of the sinking marine ships below a cloud of approaching crows. Kurasu is good on his word, he isn't going to be happy with our news though, Naruto commented. That's not my problem, this whole thing had us staying a full 2 weeks extra, it's time to get out while the getting is good, Kushina responded. Good point, that doesn't mean we should burn bridges though, I mean we can keep lending the revolutionaries a hand, right? Naruto asked. Well see, with what I have planned they might not want that, then again they might want to keep good relations all the more, so we have to wait for the damned crowman to land already, Kushina scowled up at the mutter of crows slowly circling above. The group of birds shifted as they descended, finally taking the shape of a tall, pale and muscular man wearing black feathery coat and a beak-like mask. Naruto fought down the slight grimace at the sight of the North Army executive. The man was one of the most noble and respectable that Naruto had ever met, yet he was still just a bit too off-putting. Kushina, Naruto, I see you cold and stay patient, Kurasu said without any sort of emotion. It was totally her idea. Naruto immediately threw his sister under the bus, causing the older Redeed's jaw to drop as she spun to look at her brother. What, it's true, it was your idea, Naruto insisted. He really didn't want to spend more time being lectured by Kurasu again about reckless behavior or something. The man was eerie. It doesn't matter, what's done is done, and my men will help to gather the supplies you want and get them on the ships. I know there is something else the two of you wanted to discuss with me though. I didn't need you causing more havoc while pretending to be patient, so let's get it over with, Kurasu stated apathetically. Kushina sniffed a bit derisively, but couldn't really say much. Both she and her brother were known to be a bit hot-headed, they also tended to play with their food as it were, and so had more than once been on Karasa's bad side. He probably was looking forward to this day as much as they had been. Well, you already know what I'm going to say, the agreement ends today, well it ended 2 weeks ago, but a little pro bono work is good for keeping close relations, Kushina said nonchalantly. What do you plan then? Kurasu asked, glancing between the two spawn of a Yonko. He expected they would be returning home to their father and mother to meet with them, he wasn't totally mistaken. That's not really any of your business, it'll take Dragon's message to my parents, no worries. After that though, I guess y'all see like everyone else, the woman said with a grin. Kurasu rolled his eyes and turned his attention to Naruto, who had a small smirk on his face. The pointed look from the creepy crowman was enough to get him to rat his sister's big secret plan out to their former commander. She's planning to start up a pirate crew of her own under the umbrella of the Red Hair Alliance, Naruto said, trying to avoid looking directly into the creepy man's eyes. Kushina huffed slightly at her younger brother for ruining her fun, while Kurasu mumbled about wishing the pair of them would grow up. What do you mean Red Hair Alliance? Kurasu asked, realizing there was a bit of important information in that sentence. The siblings looked at one another briefly before turning to look back at Kurasu and Sink. After repeating it a couple times, the executive officer got the message that they planned on teasing him with only so much information, annoying kids pretending to be adults, that's all they were in Karasa's opinion. Whatever, Naruto, will you be doing the same? Kurasu asked, annoying as they might be, the red hair siblings were both incredibly strong and talented commanders. If he could keep one around even as just support in some capacity, then it was good for the Revolutionary Army. Well, Naruto drawled out, glancing over at his sister who tilted her head in surprise. Well? Kurasu asked, annoyed yet again by the comical drawing out of the conversation by the younger man. Well, see, that's the thing I hadn't really talked to Kushina about. I kinda hope to do it later, just the two of us, but unique, yeah, well, use unique as you are, Kurasu. You are good people, so I trust you well enough, Naruto said before turning to face Kushina. Sis, I'm not becoming your first mate. Both of the older members of the conversation glanced at one another before turning to face Naruto once again. So what? Starting your own crew up? Don't tell me you plan to stay with the army, Mom won't be pleased by that, and if Mom is unhappy, Kushina trailed off. Dad is unhappy, yeah I know, no I just, maybe, I don't know, I love you Kushina, really, but aren't you tired of me following you around everywhere? I mean everything I do is always either following after you or Dad or Mom, especially you and Dad, does that make any sense? He asked, causing his sister to grin as she reached over and pulled him into a sideways hug. First of all, I will never get tired of you following me around, I love having you as my backup, I trust you more than anyone else in the world. I get what you mean though, she said as she released him. Yeah, why do you think I dragged you along to join the army? Mom and Dad still aren't real happy about that one, don't get me wrong Kurasu, they love what you guys do for people and are all for fighting the good fight against the world nobles, but you guys have a tendency to step on toes, Yonko-sized toes, so watch yourselves, Kushina said, changing to face the crowman halfway through. What do you plan on doing, Naruto? Kushina asked as she turned back to her little brother. Naruto was silent a moment but locked eyes with his sister to try and express how serious he was with his decision. I know you will think it sounds dumb, but I just want to see the world, go as I please, visit random islands, all that kind of thing, he explained to Kushina. The elder sibling was already grinning by the time he was done speaking yet again, slowly the grin shifted to a content and understanding smile. It doesn't sound dumb at all, take your time and enjoy the world while you can, just remember you got family that wants you coming home safe and sound, and that if you ever need help you just need to call, not to mention, I'll always have a spot for you on my crew, Kushina replied warmly. Thanks, Naruto smiled softly before his smile shifted to a slight grin, but maybe keep that promise to yourself till after you have a ship and crew of your own, eh? Kushina rolled her eyes before stepping away, she still needed to collect up her things from their camp in preparation to leave. She'd say proper goodbyes to her kid brother later. Kurasu however still had more he wanted to discuss. The younger man might not be truly part of the Revolutionary Army any longer, but that didn't mean he couldn't be helpful. If you needed an idea for where to get started on your adventuring in the world, I might have an idea and a job for you, one the Revolutionary Army is willing to pay for, Kurasu suggested. Oh really? Naruto asked, turning to fully face his former commanding officer. Really, and all we need is for you to be, well not really you, but a subtler you, Kurasu said. Naruto frowned for a second before realizing that Kurasu was making a joke, he chuckled lightly before shaking his head. You really need to try and put some inflection into your voice when you say something funny, you kind of just sound like an asshole otherwise, Naruto said. I have to speak using speakers, they can't really do inflection all that well, Kurasu replied. Well damn, now I feel like the asshole, Naruto mumbled. Odd, I would think you were used to it by now, Karasa's dry tone said, causing Naruto to narrow his eyes at the crowman. You are making a joke now, aren't you? See that inflection thing your speakers can't do is messing with me, Naruto complained, causing Kurasu to sigh. It was going to take forever to hash out the details of their agreement, he already knew it, still, it would be helpful. At the very least to maintain some form of contact with a powerful ally like Naruto after he had gone his own way from the Revolutionary Army. 3 months later, Naruto found himself in Alabasta standing across from his opponent with several witnesses watching the two of them. It had been remarkably easy to get this far into the organization. The millions were practically nothing but run-of-the-mill thugs and low-level bounty hunters, and the billions were hardly any better. That was why today Naruto was getting his chance to advance. He just had to prove his strength to the organization, or more precisely Miss All Sunday, who was watching over the duel that was about to commence. Baroque works was cutthroat. Duels like this and betrayal in the field were the actual primary death among members of the organization. Naruto was about to add another member to that death count. You both know the deal, no backing out and no stopping till one of you is dead. The winner is Mr. 5 from this point on, Miss All Sunday said with a flat tone as she waved the two Baroque Works members forward to duel. You don't even have a devil fruit, you are too stupid to move up in this organization Mr. Nobody, Mr. 5 said boredly as he stepped forward and picked at his nose to create a bomb to launch at his opponent. I guess that will just make me something special when I take your spot, Mr. Corpse. I kinda like the idea of you all knowing I earned my spot among you without a fruit like the rest of you, Naruto said with a small grin. Miss All Sunday waved her hand, and the duel began with Naruto quickly spiraling out of the way as an explosive booger shot past him. Grimacing at the gross ability of his enemy Naruto decided to end the fight as quickly as possible. Closing the distance in the blink of an eye Naruto drove his fist up into Mr. 5's gut. The senior officer of Baroque Works nearly threw up from the force of the blow, and a deep throbbing ache filled his abdomen as he was sent rolling across the empty space cleared for their duel. The spectators stood up with eyes widened in shock from the sudden attack, none more so than Miss All Sunday and Miss Valentine. Mr. 5's soon-to-be former partner, Mr. 5 himself was still very much alive, nearly rolling out of the way as Naruto brought his heel down where his head had just been. The attack was strong enough to shatter the ground, and Naruto seemed barely winded or bothered from his speed and strength that he was showing to the audience. That caught Miss All Sunday's interest. It seemed this upstart billion was far more than he initially let on. She would be keeping an eye on him, given that he didn't suddenly fail spectacularly and die. Mr. 5 tried to regain an advantage, spitting on the ground in front of him and detonating a sizable blast that kicked up a large cloud of dust, hoping to blind his opponent long enough for him to come up with a strategy. It didn't work. That won't work with me, Naruto said plainly as the dust cloud swirled and he appeared behind the officer with a fist cocked back. Mr. 5 only had enough time to turn halfway toward Naruto when the fist slammed into his back and bounced him off the ground. Naruto caught the man by his ankle and pulled him up into another brutal punch that dispersed the dust and sent Mr. 5 skidding across the ground like a ragdoll. Once he came to a rest, Naruto paused in his attack to watch as his target hacked and coughed until a thick splatter of blood spilled out of his mouth. How? Was all he got out before Naruto was over him with his left leg raised to stomp on his head. He never got an answer to his question as the foot came down on his head and killed him in an instant. For his part, Naruto frowned at the waste of life. He was no stranger to killing, but he didn't enjoy it, especially when the man he had just killed had done nothing more to Naruto than stand in his way. Thankfully for him to maintain his image, the only one to notice the small frown at killing his opponent was Miss All Sunday. Despite being second in command of the organization, she had her own agenda, and the oddness surrounding Naruto was enough to truly pique her interest, at least for a few moments. Well, that's that, the boss will be happy someone strong like you has replaced the former Mr. 5. Welcome. Miss All Sunday trailed off waiting for him to give his name. Naruto extended his hand with a small smile, doing his best to ignore the corpse just behind him. Now, Mr. 5, the pleasure really is mine. Miss All Sunday. The woman eyed him for a moment before the smallest of grins slid onto her lips. She waved him over to the umbrella-wielding blonde woman and introduced the two new partners. You will have plenty of time to get to know one another on this job. Everyone was pretty sure that your predecessor would win, so this job was initially meant for him and Miss Valentine. But you are now the official Mr. 5, so good luck, she said, handing a card to Naruto before pivoting and striding off without looking back. Naruto dropped the unconscious pirate into the cell with the rest of his crew. He was getting pretty tired of these easy jobs. He had hoped his time gathering information on Baroque Works would have been more interesting than it was. All he seemed to do these days, for the last year really, is bounty hunting job after bounty hunting job. He and his partner had been on one mission after another for the past several months. While it had been great for Naruto earning the trust of his comrades, it was also tedious and boring. Naruto had been raised among the crew of a Yonko in the New World. Easy jobs like this were a struggle to stay awake long enough to complete. That is the last of them, Makita, or as all others knew her, Miss Valentine, said as she strolled up beside him. It's always the same, none of these thugs are worth it. I don't see why we bother when they won't stand a chance on the Grand Line in the first place. The boss would be better off letting them burn themselves out on the sea and saving us the hassle, Naruto complained. Oh, you big baby, you were just moaning about how unhappy you were sitting around in Alabasta, watching those people tear each other apart. There just is no making you happy, Makita said as she kicked the cell door closed and strutted past her partner spinning her umbrella. The two had grown close over the last year, very close. Naruto had even come close to trying to recruit her to help with his mission several times, usually after they had finished pleasuring one another into passing out. She was very flexible. He hadn't brought her in on his true mission though, she didn't even know his real name. It saddened him quite a lot, and he hoped that when he eventually did reveal himself, she would be smart and side with him. Sadly he couldn't shake the thought that it was wishful thinking. Makita was very sure of herself. Climbing the stairs up onto the deck of their captured ship, Naruto smiled as he saw a pair of Baroque works vessels closing in to escort them into Alabasta waters. They made good time returning to Alabasta with their new hull. The ship would be fixed up and added to the Baroque works forces, and the prisoners would suffer a similar fate. As they docked, a handful of billions and a small horde of millions swept onto the ship and began their work. Naruto watched them march, or in most cases drag the prisoners from below deck down to a set of wagons with cages. He still wasn't sure why they bothered, except to keep up their image. The money made from their bounties was almost nothing compared to what was pulled in from Rainbase or the other missions that the organization participated in. Most of these pirates wouldn't even be smart enough to take the deal. They'd be offered to join Baroque works, so they would either end up dead or in Impel Down. Either way, it still wasn't near enough of a turnaround to really justify it. It went against what he had come to understand about Baroque works leader. Crocodile was for the most part pretty efficient with his money and time. Naruto knew that the man was building himself up as the hero of Alabasta, but he was pretty sure there was quite a bit more to the scheme than just peacocking about in the praise of the dehydrated nation of Alabasta. The undercover mercenary shook his head of those thoughts. It didn't achieve anything to idly ponder about what Mr. 5, what are you waiting for? Miss Valentine asked from the dock. Nothing, just getting my bearings I suppose, Naruto replied before he made his way down to join her. The pair chatted aimlessly as they made their way to the small bar they had been instructed to meet Miss All Sunday at, both to receive pay and to get their next mission. Naruto doubted the woman would actually be there in person. She typically left some sort of lower level member to give the pair of officers a package containing everything they needed. He was a bit surprised to catch sight of the beauty sitting at the bar with her long legs crossed as she slipped at her drink waiting for them. As usual, Naruto found himself on edge around the woman. He knew who she was, the infamous devil child, Nico Robin. He had no doubt she had been nothing more than an innocent child when her bounty was originally placed. By now though, Naruto could recognize the hardened and somewhat paranoid survivor that was Nico Robin. It didn't help that he was one of the few that had seen her complete a mission. He had hoped to get her alone and try and recruit her to his cause then. She was one of the highest profile marks that the Revolutionary Army wanted at least to partner with, similarly to himself and his sister. Instead of recruiting her though, he had watched as she coldly and efficiently dispatched an entire crew of pirates by snapping each and every one of their necks. The act of killing didn't bar her from recruitment, of course, they were an army, and if anything her willingness to take life was a desired trait. The issue lay in the fact that now Naruto knew he would be in for a tough fight should she be loyal to Crocodile. Things had changed since then though. Naruto now knew her loyalty to the warlord in command of Baroque works was tenuous. She was only interested in gaining access to the poneglyphs of the world. She needed help accessing the one held by the royal family of Alabasta. Well, Crocodile was after something with the royal family as well. What specifically Naruto wasn't sure, at least not yet. Ah, I'm glad to see you two are on schedule. Here is payment and orders for your next job, Miss All Sunday said as she handed them the usually brown paper package filled with belly and documents. Oh, Miss Valentine said thoughtfully as she took the package from the dark-haired woman. Is there something wrong? She asked the blonde. Oh, no, it's just with you actually meeting us in person I thought things would be different. Usually you just have one of the billions or the bartender give us the package, Makita replied. Ah, yes, actually I need to discuss something with Mr. 5. It has to do with his family, Miss All Sunday said, causing Naruto to tense up and the hair on the back of his neck to stand on end. It won't take long, but we need a brief moment of privacy, Miss Valentine. The blonde glanced toward Naruto who stiffly nodded, causing her to frown. Hesitantly she walked back to the door to the bar, clearly unhappy about being cut out of whatever her partner and superior were about to discuss, especially since it would have given her some more information about her partner. Mr. 5 and Miss All Sunday sat silently at the bar for a little while, both watching the other out of the corner of their eye as they appeared to remain relaxed and enjoying their drinks. Finally though, Miss All Sunday broke her silence. You have done a good job infiltrating the organization. I didn't realize you had until a couple of days after you took over as Mr. 5, the woman commented. Naruto's eyes widened at the fact she had figured him out so long ago. He was surprised, but his mind immediately had to wonder why it was that she had done nothing about it. He was sure if she had told Crocodile he would already have had to fight his way out of some ambush from the other officer agents. You don't need to worry, if I planned on telling Crocodile I would have by now, you know that though, right? I mean you are the only son of Red Hair Shanks and Mito the Sea Witch. That caught me by surprise. Well done with the hair dye, the blonde threw me off, but I really hope that I can see the red at some point. Robin seemed to continue poking fun at Naruto, succeeding in calming him down. What exactly do you want? Naruto attempted to cut to the chase. My answer is always, knowledge. I had to figure out what reason the son of a Yonko would even want with joining up in Baroque works. I don't really know why, but both you and your sister's time as revolutionary officers were somewhat hard to figure out, she responded. And you were very well researched, fitting for the last devil of O'Hara, Naruto responded. Robin seemed to expect something like that as his answer, and so with a raised eyebrow she waved for him to continue speaking. Part of why I am here is to recruit you, he stated simply. That finally caught her a bit surprised. She blinked before turning to better face him. Why? You know, the world government really is pretentious. I mean you have to label a little girl a demon and put a bounty on her head high enough for every half-decent bounty hunter or worse on her trail, Naruto said. He saw Robin's expression had darkened slightly, but mostly remained blank. I'm trying to say you and the revolution have a similar enemy, he said. Why would I join you when I am doing fine where I'm at? She asked. I know you're going to turn on Crocodile, just like we both know Hess going to turn on you. I'm also not offering to join the Revolutionary Army. I'm not even an officer for them anymore. I work with them and they pay me. I just so happen to have similar goals to them. That's what I'm suggesting to you, Naruto explained. Both slipped into silence following that. The two sets of blue eyes stared back at one another for what felt like an eternity. Finally Robin hummed before finishing her drink. I'll get back in touch with you in a few days. For now just handle your mission with Makita. With that, Robin stepped away and made her way out of the little bar. Better than I feared I would get in response, Naruto said with a sigh. He knocked his own drink back before stepping over to join his partner. As they left he quickly realized that she was going to pester him constantly for what he and Robin spoke about. Maybe in time he would bring her in on it. He was growing fond of her after all. Not just because she was an excellent lay either. I just don't get why it has to be us that get sent. Why can't they send some of the billions or something? Makita complained as they made their way toward their destination. The billions are like 99% garbage, Naruto replied easily as he continued to relax and wait for the trip to be over. It's the East Blue, even the billions would be fine here, not to mention I like to try and enjoy the trip when we go on a mission. Nothing in the East Blue is really worth visiting, she continued to whine. I wouldn't be too sure about that, Naruto said simply. I still think we are overkill, Ms. Valentine bemoaned. Naruto hummed for a moment and thought, she might be right. Naruto and Makita had a perfect track record and were among the heavy hitters of Baroque works for a reason after all. Still, Naruto knew better than to underestimate a target, especially the one they were after. Arlong was a member of Fisher Tiger's crew. Miss Valentine. He was a pretty prominent member too. Hess got other members from that crew under his command too, Naruto lectured, causing the woman to roll her eyes and scoff. I'm just so bored, she whined once again, getting a sigh from Naruto. Then do something to entertain yourself, Naruto said. He wasn't here to babysit his partner, she was usually so much less annoying. Makita blinked at his words and briefly frowned. Entertain herself with what exactly? What the hell was there to do on this tub while sailing in the most boring of seas? She blinked for a moment as her eyes locked onto the man in front of her. A devious grin began to spread across her face as she thought about precisely what could keep her entertained. After, Naruto's voice said with finality, causing her to once again blink for a second before realizing he had known what she was thinking. Oh come on, it would be great, we could pass the time and make each other feel good like usual, Makita whined again. You're so whiny today, you know I won't be able to finish in the amount of time left and aren't you still worn out from yesterday? You passed out for a couple hours, Naruto said as he focused on the blonde woman. Makita became silent as memories of the day before entered her mind, and she could almost feel the phantom waves of pleasure washing over her body again. She really had passed out in the end before Naruto even really finished with her, but after 4 rounds it became a bit much. She was sore today too, but that desire to feel him taking her again made that ache more one of longing than remnants of her past activities with her partner. So, I could go some more, she cooked, trying to coax him into it. I said after, we don't have enough time and I'm not gonna do it unless I can get my rocks off too. Stop being selfish, Naruto said as he stood up. DCH, whatever, she pouted as she followed Naruto to the deck of the ship. Stepping out onto the deck, the redhead masquerading as a blonde took in a deep breath of the fresh sea air. It was warm, but not terribly hot with the breeze, and just ahead of them, he could see the islands they were heading to. Well, find Arlong Park there, but first let's look around the island and see if we can't get an idea of what we're dealing with when it comes to this guy, Naruto said as he stared over to the small unassuming island. Sure, Makita said simply, pulling a small sigh from Naruto. She yelled when Naruto pulled her into his arms and his hand rested on her inner thigh, less than an inch from the hem of her panties. Makita, I promise you after we finish up here I will make all our previous sessions seem like a couple of teenagers trying to figure things out, you'll be ruined for other men, he said with a smirk as she shivered from the feeling of his breath tickling across the nape of her neck. Fine, she managed to say though it was a bit muffled as her teeth kept her bottom lip trapped between them. That's my Miss Valentine, he hissed again causing her to shiver again. Ah, stop teasing me or I'll take you right now, she growled through her pleasure. Yeah, sure, Naruto said as he released her and went back to staring at the island as they approached. The ship anchored a ways offshore and the pair of Mr. Five and Miss Valentine made their way onto the island. As they landed though they could tell something was going on. An entire village was destroyed, as if it had been flipped over and crushed, Naruto hummed in thought as he took stock of what was going on, his eyes widened briefly as he pulled Makita into a small shadowed corner as he watched an odd scene develop in front of him. A small boy attacked an older one with a long nose, claiming him to be a fishman. They watched as a beautiful woman became involved, grabbing both and fleeing as soon as she saw a real fishman in the town. It was a bit comical to watch as she knocked the long-nosed man unconscious. What the hell are we doing? Makita asked him. She didn't try and move, held against him as she was, it was pleasant. What we were told to do, observing Arlong and his crew, Naruto said. Why? Arlong isn't even here and we aren't learning anything from watching one grunt, the female agent was annoyed. Makita, Naruto began causing her to calm down as he used her name. What? She asked, far softer than her earlier question. You want to know about the real me, not Mr. Five but Naruto right? He asked, revealing his name and shocking her. He always kept things businesslike, even when they were in the bedroom. Yeah, she sounded a bit unsure. Then humor me on this mission, go back to the ship and wait till I signal you, Naruto began before he had to press a finger to the woman's lips to stop her from launching into a tirade or something. Just humor me please. Naruto asked, giving her a pleading look. Makita bit her lip and mad with clear she wasn't pleased, still slowly she nodded. That's my Miss Valentine, and don't worry, I'll call you in to help when the fight breaks out, keep the den mushy near you for the signal okay? Naruto explained. Fine, but you owe me, when this is over you and I are having a get-together, and you are finally telling me what is up with all this shady shit surrounding you, she said before slipping out of her partner's grasp and lightening herself and be carried away by the wind. Naruto waited until he knew he was alone to pull out his own den mushy. After it rang a few times the recipient of his call picked up. It's been a while, Naruto, is something going on? Robin asked pleasantly. Since she had accepted his offer the two had slowly grown closer and closer. Unlike most of those she was surrounded by, Robin felt she could trust Naruto, at least to an extent. He wasn't about to try and hand her in for the bounty she had. He had his own after all, and he had much of the same enemies that she did. Add on to that she could tell he at least partially was concerned about helping the people of Alabasta and the other nations affected by the world government and various pirates, and he had become the most trusted person to her in the world. Sadly that wasn't truly saying much, she trusted absolutely no one else at all. She knew the crocodile would eventually betray her and him, but the idea of doing some good while also getting what she wanted in Alabasta was very appealing. Well, I plan on asking Makita to join us after this mission is done, Naruto said. Are you certain? She asked. He could pick up the slight worry in her voice. It had taken a lot to get her to trust him as much as she did. I have to try, Crocodile is getting closer and closer to his endgame, we need to be ready, the more support we have the less damage that Alabasta will suffer at his hands, Naruto answered. Alright, Robin agreed, she still had her reservations, but she couldn't stop him. Good, secondly Arlong isn't leaving this island alive, Naruto announced, causing Robin to go silent for a moment. I see, what made you decide that? She asked. Usually all the higher profile people he brought in to be either made part of Baroque works or at least get the bounty for them. The rumors of him having a sea monster are true, pretty sure he flattened an entire village, people and all, Naruto replied. I see, well, good luck with Miss Valentine then, Robin said before the line clicked and the call ended. Always such a mysterious woman, Naruto said with a chuckle as he sped the blue-haired woman from earlier, dragging the unconscious long-nosed boy and small child along. He decided she would be his best bet to figure things out on the island. He didn't want to cause more problems for these folks than he needed to, so before he leveled Arlong's little crew, he would need to gather some information. The tangerine orchard? Naruto wondered aloud. He plucked one from the nearest plant and helped himself. His eyes widened at the taste. The care put into growing the fruit here was clear with each bite. The fruit were juicier and more flavorful than any he normally got his hands on, and as an officer for Baroque works, he wasn't exactly struggling to make ends meet. The blue-haired woman drugged the unconscious man inside as she and the boy made themselves comfortable. Naruto wasn't sure beyond being naturally curious as to why exactly he was following the trio back to this little farmhouse on the edge of a village. Sure, he needed to learn everything he could about what was going on surrounding Arlong, not truly for Baroque works, but the revolutionaries. After he had passed on that he had a mission to observe Arlong and his crew, the Revolutionary Army had asked that he check on and if need be disrupt Arlong's control of his territory. They knew he was bribing Marines and government officials so that he could oppress those under his control, but they weren't sure what was needed to help those under his thumb. That was where Naruto came in. He wasn't looking to make a name for himself among the people here, it would kind of defeat his whole point of hiding among a warlord's underlings, but he wanted to help break people from the corrupt world government system. Those that suffered from pirates abusing that corruption for their gain fell under that too. He lightly knocked on the door after spending some time looking through the orchard. It took a moment, but the blue-haired woman slowly opened the door. A wary look was present in her eyes, not surprising really. Naruto couldn't blame her for her caution. Actually, he applauded it mentally, though with someone like him, her being so cautious won't help much. "Can I help you?" she asked when Naruto simply stood quietly looking back at her. "Well, maybe, I can probably help you too," Naruto said with a smile. "Yeah? I don't really need your help," she said bluntly as she tried to close the door only for his foot to block the door. "I insist," he said as he slowly pushed the door open, making it clear she had no way to stop him. As he stepped in, the long-nosed boy screamed and sat up. He looked lost, which was reasonable, Naruto supposed. "How about some tea?" Naruto asked, causing the woman to glare at him. "I have juice," she said, before blinking, realizing she was already making her way over to the kitchen to get them all a glass of juice, even the man that had just forced his way into the house. "That's fine, some fresh squeezed juice sounds good right about now," Naruto said as he dropped into a chair at the table. Both of the younger people in the room watched him warily. Despite the woman giving him a glass of juice and acting the part of a good host, her wary look was more of well-controlled anger instead. "What is going on?" the long-nosed boy asked as he looked around the house. "I have the same question," Miss Naruto began, motioning toward the blue-haired woman with his hand. She narrowed her eyes at him before sighing. "It's Najiko, now who are you two?" "I'm Naruto," he said, simply turning his attention to the younger man. "Oh, I'm Usopp." Usopp jumped to his feet and struck a pose. "I am the legendary Captain Usopp of the East Blue, greatest maritime adventurer on the seas," he boasted. Both Naruto and Najiko stared at Usopp flatly, while the boy blinked in confusion at his outburst, causing him to deflate. He pouted faintly and took a spot at the table at his own glass of juice. "Well, Naruto and Usopp, what are you doing on this island?" "Arlong isn't fond of strangers on his turf," Najiko said, placing a hand on her hip and raising an eyebrow at the two of them. Naruto turned to look at Usopp, causing the boy to become nervous under the gazes of the two older individuals boring into him. As he fidgeted, Naruto narrowed his eyes. This kid was familiar for some reason, and his name was setting off all kinds of alarms in his head that he knew him or at least of him. "Wait, Usopp? As in Yasopp's kid?" Naruto wondered aloud. "You know my dad?" Usopp asked, stunned. Well, I've met him, he mentioned you look a lot like him too," Naruto said. He didn't want to admit to having grown up around Yasopp and the rest of the red hair pirates. He was Mr. 5 right now, not the son of Shanks. "Oh," Usopp said, sounding a bit disappointed that Naruto supposedly only knew his father in passing. "Look boys, can you tell me why you're here now?" Najiko interrupted, beginning to truly lose her patience. "Well, Usopp?" Naruto asked, putting the question onto the long-nosed boy's shoulders. "Well, wait, I'm only here cause you whacked me," he said, pointing at Najiko, "and when I was trying to save you too." "I'm the one that saved you. Had you done anything to that fishman, there is no question that you would have been killed," Najiko explained. "She has a point, no offense, but I don't think you're really up to a fight with a fishman pirate from the Grand Line," Naruto said. "If you're anything like your dad, your specialty is in ranged weapons. You don't look like much of a fighter besides that, so you won't last all that long, especially with just that slingshot." Usopp frowned at that. Naruto's words felt almost like he was telling him his father would be disappointed in him, but he shook those thoughts free from his mind. After all, Naruto only knew him in passing. How could he know him all that well in the first place? As if he would really understand how skilled he was by a glance. "That still doesn't answer why you are here," Najiko said with a grumble before finally turning her attention to the little boy she had brought along with her. "You're a kid from Gosa, right? Surely you know all too well from first-hand experience that you'll be killed if you mess with a fishman," she said, switching everyone's attention to the angrily shaking little boy. "I know, but they killed my daddy." They stole everything, destroyed our town, and killed tons of people. They have to pay. No matter what they have to pay," he shouted. Naruto and the others continued to listen, small traces of pity entering their gazes as they stared down at the boy. "So I went to Arlong Park, but a girl on his side got in the way. She was like a witch. I hate this. I don't care if I die, I'm going to avenge my daddy," the boy screamed. "Then die," Najiko said, simply causing Naruto's eyes to widen and Usopp to spray himself with juice as she spit his drink out in shock. "If you're prepared to die, then go get your revenge. Just know this, now that me and the witch at Arlong Park have stopped you, you've escaped death twice now." She stood up and walked into her kitchen. "Leave when you finish your drink." "Hey, don't you think you're being a bit harsh on the kid?" Usopp asked. "She's right," Naruto said, grabbing the room's attention. "What is a little child like you going to do? Your daddy was way stronger than you, right? Arlong's still walking around and Hess dead. You can't get revenge by just dying to the same man who killed your father in the first place, right? Shut up and let him go if he wants. If someone wants to die, just let them. He doesn't have the guts to live through hard times anyway," Najiko interjected. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Najiko, but she wasn't finished. "I know," a kid was staring fixedly at the distant future, all while enduring a life more painful than death. "I hate people like him, who consider death right off the bat." Her voice was cold, but Naruto could tell she wasn't pleased with saying such things to the kid. It seemed that following the trio was a good choice. This island really needed help, and Najiko might be the perfect way to figure out what he was dealing with, not just with Arlong and his crew. The island had some deep problems they needed a hand with, both in regards to the government and their own time being oppressed by Arlong and his cronies. What should I do?" the boy asked. "What about your mom?" Najiko asked him immediately. "She's alive," he admitted. "Then go back to her, she's bound to be worried about you," Najiko said. A few moments later and the kid was on his way, a bundle of tangerines in his hands as Najiko watched him leave from the window. "You know, you're actually a really nice person, even if you have all those tattoos," Usopp said. "If anything, those add to her look, kid," Naruto said. Najiko was a beautiful woman, and the tattoos really did add to her appearance. "Neither of you have answered my question. I don't know anything about you besides your names," Najiko said bluntly, ignoring the comments about her that Naruto had made easily. She was used to words like that from town anyway. "Right, sorry, like I said, I'm Captain Usopp and I came to this island to look for a girl named Nami," Usopp finally answered. "Nami?" Najiko asked in surprise, clearly knowing the girl he was after. "You know her?" he asked. "Sure, she's one of the leaders in Arlong's crew," Najiko answered. "What?" Usopp cried out, spraying himself with his drink again. "Yeah, she's pretty infamous in this area. That girl the boy ran into earlier, the witch, was probably her. What's more, she grew up right here in this house," Najiko explained. Your sister then?" Naruto asked. "Yeah, we were adopted sisters. Me and Nami were both orphans. We were brought up in this house by our adoptive mother Bellamere. She's gone too. The three of us used to live happily here in Koko-ashi village," the brunette continued. "So, Nami betrayed her own parent and fellow villagers and joined Arlong's group?" Usopp asked. Najiko paused for a moment, only for a second, but Naruto caught it and narrowed his eyes even further as he focused on the woman's body language. It was extremely brief before she returned to her previous demeanor, but there was more to the story she was holding back, he knew that for sure. "Yeah, pretty much, a real witch, huh?" Najiko asked as she slowly turned to face the two men again. "Damn it, so she had us fooled the entire time then. She was after treasure from the very start, even after she helped fight to protect my village, and was smiling so happily on board our ship," Usopp growled. "Oh, happily? Her?" Najiko asked, sounding quite pleased by that fact. "We came here to bring her with us, but I guess there's no need for that." Usopp froze as he realized something. "That actually reminds me, a friend of ours was unlucky enough to be caught by the fishmen. This is bad. I wonder how Hess holding up." Usopp began asking himself more than Najiko and Naruto. "Well, if they didn't just kill him, they probably locked him up in their dungeon," Najiko said as she leaned against the wall. "They have a dungeon? Are they pirates or lords?" Usopp asked angrily, while thinking about having to convince Luffy not to attempt springing Zoro out of a dungeon. "Those aren't mutually exclusive, plenty of pirates make themselves up like kings, especially on the Grand Line," Naruto said before turning to look at Najiko. "So they keep prisoners locked up in their dungeon then, they have a lot of other hostages." "No, just one other. They usually kill anyone that goes against them, rather than capturing them, but sometimes they chuck them into the dungeon for a few days, then release them if they are too important to outright kill, like a few craftsmen and the like," Najiko explained. And the other hostage?" Naruto asked. Najiko was silent for a time as Usopp glanced back and forth between them. "My mother, Bellamere," she revealed, causing Usopp to spray his own drink on himself for a third time and Naruto to connect the dots. I see. Naruto had left shortly after that. Najiko was still without an answer to why he had barged into her home or was even on the island, but as he was leaving she was content to leave it be and put the interaction behind her. Usopp likewise was a bit shocked by the abrupt farewell, but was mostly just disappointed Naruto hadn't shared any more about his father. So, this Nami is practically a hostage herself, trying to appease Arlong to protect the villagers and her mother, who is being held captive by Arlong himself. Judging by that scribble on the table, she must have some skill with map making, and probably navigation in general, useful, but to go through the trouble of keeping a hostage just to keep her loyal to him. Naruto thought as he walked up to the hill overlooking Koko-ashi village. Plus there was what Usopp was saying, Nami helped to save another village in need and seemed truly happy about being with his crew. Najiko clearly noticed as well. Wait, did he say Luffy? Naruto suddenly realized the name Usopp had mentioned, trying to convince to leave someone named Zoro behind. Monkey D, Luffy. Small world after all, huh? Naruto thought aloud with a grin. His attention switched to the village below as he saw people begin to gather and some kind of commotion begin. He quickly made his way down the hill, but remained out of sight to see what was going on. Oh, so that's Arlong then, he thought idly as he saw the massive fishman lift the town sheriff up like he was nothing. Listen up, you lowly humans need to keep paying up without thinking. I need enormous funds. Your tribute money will eventually become the cornerstone of what will become the Arlong Empire, which will rule the East Blue. Arlong announced to the villagers. The possession of weapons is a clear sign of rebellion, and to make sure no more rebels like you show up, I'm going to kill you right now, so you can be an example to all the other humans here. Arlong bellowed out. You have no right to do this, Arlong. A familiar voice suddenly cried out, gaining both Naruto and the fishman's attention. Najiko had run out from her hiding place. For these past 8 years straight we've paid you your tribute money. Why would we want to rebel now, of all times? Najiko hollered. Take your hands off of Genzo. Another voice shouted. Soon the whole village had taken to the street confronting Arlong and his crew over their beloved town sheriff. It's not like he used the weapons. Another added. I'm saying that the possession of weapons indicates the will to rebel, or what? Shall the entire village be destroyed? Arlong asked with a bloodthirsty grin on his face. If just one of you lays your hands on us, your entire village will meet its demise. Either way is fine with me. Add inside everyone. If we cause trouble now, the last 8 years will have been for nothing. If you are going to fight to the death to defy his rule, you should have done so 8 years ago instead. But we all swore to fight the patient fight, to live instead. Genzo declared. From his spot, Naruto sighed. He felt compelled to simply step out and kill Arlong now. It would be simple, but several things stopped him. Every person in this village would be at risk then, even certain that he would defeat Arlong. The town would be caught in the middle. On top of that, these people had something planned. He didn't know what exactly. But before leaving, Najiko had admitted that Nami was working to buy Belomir's and the island's freedom. Sadly, unlike the people of Koko-ashi village, Naruto was very used to the thinking process of the scum of the Grand Line. There was no way Arlong would keep to his word, especially with the revelation of him planning to forge an empire of his own in the East Blue. It was no wonder he needed this Nami girl. He'd need a source of well-made maps to properly control the East Blue if he truly wanted to rule. What a valuable opinion. You're a great public speaker. Yes, being alive is enjoyable. Even for puny insects like you. Arlong yelled as she slammed the sheriff against the ground, causing him to spit up blood. Not all living things are born equal. He announced with a laugh as he looked over the crowd of humans before him. Naruto continued to watch as Genzo kept the villagers from coming to his aid. He sighed and closed his eyes to the scene, while bowing his head slightly in respect. It was as Najiko said after all. If someone wants to die, then just let them. He didn't want to step on the sacrifices these people had been making for the last 8 years, or the sacrifice this Genzo seemed to want to make now. Before he could finish the sheriff off though, Naruto heard Usopp shout from a hiding spot just before a small explosion engulfed Arlong's upper torso and head. It forced him to drop the man. The fishmen were shocked for a moment before one managed to locate the culprit. Up there, on the rooftop. He called as he pointed out. Naruto followed to where he had pointed and sighed, standing out clearly and striking another stupid pose. Usopp stood with his arms crossed and head tilted up arrogantly. He looked foolish as could be with his slingshot up there. Who the hell are you? One of the fishmen shouted. I am Captain Usopp, brave warrior of the sea. He declared proudly. It might have been a little impressive if his legs weren't trembling and sweat wasn't pouring off of him in waves. The world fears me and calls me the Demon King Usopp, the man from the netherworld. If you run away now, I'll forgive you. I have 8,000. Usopp began to ramble as he yelled down at the gathered crowd. Huh? Arlong. That's him. The guy that got away earlier. The fishman from Gosa village told his leader. Arlong growled as the smoke cleared and he slowly turned to look at Usopp. Bring all the tens of thousands of men you want. He'll tear apart every last one. He stopped and looked at his arms and chest, seeing the small dusting of soot from the exploding star. He snarled and his eyes bulged in rage. The massive fishman shook to try and rid himself of the dust now covering him, but it didn't easily come off. "What is a mere lowly human done to me?" he roared as he shook in rage. He stooped down and tore the entire house that Yusuf was standing on off its foundation, only pausing when his men called out to him. "Stop. Arlong, we'll lose another source of tribute money after Gosa," one pleaded. "Human settlements are easy to destroy, but our goal is to rule them, remember?" Another tried. He hesitated for a moment, just a moment. "If we lose some we can always get some more. We are the supreme species." Arlong hurled the house into another, making both collapse. Yusuf popped out of the rubble after a second, gasping for air and panicking. Several fishmen chased after him as he fled, while Arlong's commanders held him back and physically carried him off back toward Arlong Park to keep from wrecking the whole village. "You're lucky, we'll be back later, so you're spared for now," another commander said as he followed after Arlong and the others. Naruto watched as the villagers helped Genzo and began cleaning up his wounds, that is until an orange-haired girl entered the village and greeted everyone. He watched on as villagers turned their backs toward her and went back to their homes. The only ones remaining were her sister, Genzo, and the doctor. "You don't ever come through the village on your way," Najiko said as she smiled over at Nami. "I heard a loud noise," Nami said as she glanced back toward the wrecked houses. "Arlong, huh?" The pair began walking back toward the tangerine orchard, catching up a little as they went. When they reached the house though, Najiko was surprised to find Naruto standing there. "So, you must be Nami then," Naruto greeted them. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Somebody who can help you, if you want, that is," Naruto offered. "For what?" Najiko asked, recalling how Naruto had still not told her why he was here. "You want money?" "We don't have any, what help would you be anyway?" One guy. "Our situation is our own business, Olive," Nami added. Naruto rolled his eyes. "I don't want money, I have another idea, but that's beside the point. I can help you get rid of Arlong, just ask and I can make it happen." "We don't even know you," Najiko said. "Fair, but I know enough about your situation to get the gist of it. Correct me where I'm wrong, but your mother is being held hostage until you essentially pay her ransom, and the whole village's ransom to Arlong in exchange for your freedom. Well, he needs you to continue to make more and more maps for him to make this crackpot Arlong Empire idea he has a reality. To make all this possible, you have been scamming people all around the East Blue to try and make enough belly to pay him off, right?" Naruto asked. Both women were silent for a moment before Nami answered him. "I only need 8,000 more belly, that's it. If you come in and stir up problems now, the last 8 years are for nothing. Stay out of the way." Naruto stared back at her for a while before shaking his head. These girls were stubborn, really stubborn and naive. "It'll be around when you change your mind," Naruto said as he began to walk away, plucking a tangerine from a plant as he went. "Just leave, I won't be changing my mind," she said as he passed by. "Yeah, and I'm sure Arlong will keep his word to you and everything," Naruto said with another roll of his eyes. "Whatever, I'll stay out of it for now, just try and stay safe, alright? You both don't seem like bad people, and you're pretty to boot, so it would be a shame for you to die," Naruto said as he left. The girls stared after him for a while before Nami scoffed and went inside. Najiko continued to stare for a little while before turning back to her house and following after her little sister. Naruto grumbled as he came back into Koko-ashi village. Wherever Yusuf had run off to, he had made good time. As far as he could tell, he also escaped the 3 fishmen chasing him, as Naruto had watched him returning empty-handed and disappointed on the road to Arlong Park. Had also watched Nami start heading back to the pirate base carrying a letter from Najiko, probably meant for the girl's mother. He frowned, he wanted to step in, he had no doubt he could help, but they had outright refused it, and it was a great way to turn someone against you, by forcing your way into problems they felt they had resolved. That left waiting around till this so-called plan went to shit, and with outsiders trickling in with Usopp and whoever else had been on Luffy's crew with him, not to mention the pirate hunter Zoro evidently being a part of their merry band. On second thought, Naruto might not need to do much of anything. "I really do want to see what you are all about, Luffy, hurry up and arrive, your crewmates are waiting for you," Naruto thought aloud as he walked. Suddenly he paused in his stride though upon seeing someone he knew to be an interesting figure. "Pirate hunter Zoro?" Naruto asked aloud, catching the guy's attention. "Yeah? Who are you?" the green-haired man asked. "Ah, nobody, it's just that Usopp guy said you were held captive by Arlong. Kinda surprised to see you in Koko-ashi. You literally just missed your friend. He shot something at Arlong with that slingshot of his and booked it," Naruto said, getting Zoro to blink in surprise. He hadn't thought Usopp would do something like that to someone like Arlong. "Well, which way did he go?" Zoro asked. Naruto began only for a man, one that appeared to be roughed up to stumble into town. A few villagers headed over to give him a helping hand, he waved them off before spotting Zoro, and being a bit surprised, slowly the bruised up man made his way over to him to deliver the bad news to the swordsman. He got captured, they took him to Arlong Park, the man said. That's terrible, one of the villagers said. That boy defied Arlong, he's dead for sure, another added in. Zoro clenched his fist before practically growling, of all the times to get grabbed it's right after I killed some of them. Naruto was a bit surprised by that, but before he could intervene Zoro was sprinting out of town, and Naruto simply watched him go. Like I was thinking earlier, Luffy, your people need you right about now, I want to see you fight this asshole Arlong too, so hurry up before I have to handle this for you, Naruto mentally grumbled as he began heading slowly toward Arlong Park, without a doubt that was where things would kick off when they finally did get interesting. Nami boldly strode up to Arlong and the other fishmen, it seemed that Zoro wasn't hanging around anymore, but he had made a big damn mess before leaving, the weakest members of Arlong's crew had been butchered, and it was clear who was the culprit, Nami had already heard their suspicions about her involvement begin to circulate. She needed to put an end to them, luckily Usopp was there to help, willing or not. Watch what you say, me, a traitor. I swore I was a member of this group 8 years ago with this tattoo. Nami proclaimed as she pushed some of the fishmen out of her way to approach Arlong. Sorry, Nami, it's only natural for you to be upset, but rest easy, I don't suspect you one bit, Arlong said, you and me have known each other for 8 years now, we were just a little on edge is all, right, Nami? The ones we need to get rid of are Arano Zoro and his group, he declared turning to look at the cowering Usopp. Hey Nami, say something. Usopp begged. Why so pale, Nami? One of the fishmen asked picking up the knife beside Usopp, as for Long Nose here, not even you can save him now, not after he defied Arlong. Just how long are you going to suspect me? She demanded. You're too smart you see, he responded. It'll have the amount Arlong and I agreed on soon, why would I betray you now? She asked. Oh, I know, you agreed 8 years ago to pay for the ransom of your poor mother and to buy Koko-ashi village from Arlong for 160 million berries, but I just can't make sense of it, you betrayed your fellow villagers and even your parent and only trust money, so why does Koko-ashi village mean so much to you? He continued on interrogating the girl before pulling a rolled up piece of paper from his shirt and revealing it to be a map. Not to mention I found this in your room, he pointed at a clear X on the map, it looks like a treasure map and it's pointing at Koko-ashi village. That's my own personal map, it has nothing to do with you at all. Nami stated reaching for the map. Suddenly the group's attention was taken by Haki as he discovered the bodies of the other crew members. This was the work of Arano Zoro, but where were you Haki? This could have been prevented had you been here. Arlong shouted. Of course it could have, if only it'd been here. The octopus fishman agreed. So you don't know anything about the pirate hunter? One of the crew asked. Well, there was this one suspicious swordsman whom I'd never met before, wait, it was him. Hakken rambled as he realized what had happened, as did the rest of the crew. So you did see him, you idiot, where did he go? A crew member demanded. Well he wanted to see Arlong so I took him to Koko-ashi village, Hachi replied. Meaning there's no reason to rush out in a hurry, Hess looking for me too, Arlong commented smirking as he grew excited to avenge his crewmates. Usopp realized that Zoro was no doubt on his way back to Arlong Park now, he just needed to buy himself some time, so he didn't end up dead, as carefully as he could, he began withdrawing his slingshot from his bag and taking aim to launch a surprise attack so he could run for it. He never got the chance to though as Nami saw him and in a single motion pulled out her collapsible bow staff and cracked him across the face with it, she felt terrible doing it, but Usopp just kept getting in the way. Damn you. You picking a fight? Usopp asked as he wiped at the blood from his face. You're getting in the way. You're the one to blame. Nami barked out with a forced smile and cold eyes, this is what you get for messing with Arlong. Nami, you really disappoint me, even after you stole our ship and ran off, Luffy didn't suspect you one bit. Even now he completely trusts you, how can you trick someone like that with such an uncaring face? Usopp screamed. The only thing I trust is money, those that get fooled are the fools, she said calmly, slowly she dropped her staff and grabbed the knife from a crew member's hand and began approaching Usopp. Everything was going smoothly, you guys are going to make my 8 years of business meaningless, so the least I can do is get rid of you by my own hand, Nami said as she continued toward him. Ah, seems like you became a lot more pirate-like since you were last here, Arlong laughed as he watched. You, get rid of me? Don't make me laugh, Usopp said not taking the girl seriously. If I were you I wouldn't underestimate me, Nami responded coldly, with an even colder smile. Thinking fast as he realized that Nami might very well do it, he launched a smoke bomb to try and cover his escape, it didn't work though as Nami stepped in his way, he was too predictable. This is just like something you would do, she said as she plunged the knife forward. As the smoke cleared, the sight of Nami stabbing the boy became clear to the crew. She didn't look back up at Yusup's face as she quietly spoke to him. "This is for the sake of my business, you didn't leave me a choice," she said before withdrawing the knife from his body. "Now die like a good little boy." Yusup lifted a bloody hand as he began stumbling forward. He was as shocked as the crew, but soon fell forward into the water. As he did, the crew broke into cheers celebrating Nami getting some revenge for their crew. They happily reminded themselves that she was a leader amongst their crew for a reason. None noticed Johnny watching from the gates with tears running down his face as the girl he had come to call Big Sis so easily killed Yusup. He continued to watch as Nami denied friendship with the fishman that had been accusing her earlier and announced that she was only concerned with buying Koko-ashi village. "It'll have the 160 million soon, so keep your end of the bargain," Nami shouted out to Arlong as she headed back inside the building. "Of course, I'd rather cut open my belly and die than break a promise regarding money," Arlong replied with a smirk. "That's the kind of man I am." "Glad to hear it, Arlong, you know the score," she said before disappearing inside. Johnny continued to watch before shaking his head clear and running away from Arlong Park. "She's a witch," he declared as he disappeared down the road back toward Koko-ashi. Nami walked up the stairs to her room before slowly opening the door, revealing a room filled with plenty of maps and the like, and 2 beds. Sitting on one of the beds was a red-headed woman in her 30s that smiled sadly back at Nami as she came in. The woman watched silently as Nami turned and locked the door behind her. She slowly crossed the room until she was only a few feet from the woman before launching forward into her arms and immediately beginning to sob, catching her off guard. "Nami? What happened?" Bellamira asked. We're so close and they are going to ruin it," she cried. Suddenly both had to brace themselves as everything shook. Bellamira looked out the window wondering what had happened, perhaps a freak earthquake. Neither could have guessed it was the arrival of the rest of the Straw Hat crew in typical reckless fashion. "We told you to leave," Najiko said with a glare as Naruto helped himself to another of her tangerines. "That does sound familiar," Naruto replied before popping a slice of the fruit into his mouth. Najiko stared at him for a while before groaning, "Just tell me what you want, then you can leave." Naruto shook his head though. "Why not?" she asked. "You can't give me what I want in all honesty, that's pretty much it. I'm going to be sticking around until the whole thing is over with," Naruto replied. Najiko stomped past him into her kitchen to begin making herself something to drink, hopefully something to help her nerves too. Obviously this guy would leave when he was good and ready, and not a moment before. It was annoying, but patience was something she had used her whole life at this point, so she could bear it. "Koko-ashi is a pretty shitty place," Naruto commented while staring out the window at the orchard of tangerine trees. "What would you know?" she growled. "Well, I mean, leaving all this on the shoulders of one family, a family that is broke as hell to begin with and struggling to get by, one that was made up of a young woman and 2 little girls, and they all left it on you to handle. Koko-ashi is a shitty place, full of shitty people," Naruto said. "You don't know what you're talking about," Najiko said as she went back to her drink. Maybe I can see it better than you can. How is it right that they all just sit around and wait for you 3 to handle things? Your mother is a hostage, probably withering away in Arlong's dungeons. Your baby sister is practically a slave, and you all alone out or away from town, like they keep you at a distance," Naruto said, getting only silence from her. He sighed before turning to face the door. Najiko blinked at the action and opened her mouth to ask before suddenly there was pounding against it and the sound of a little boy shouting for her to come quick. Najiko opened the door, and before she could even ask, the little boy that was there grabbed her hand and began dragging her along behind him as he ran down the road. Naruto shrugged before he followed after them. He imagined things would be heating up soon. "Hurry!" the kid shouted as he dragged the woman along after him. "What's the big rush?" Najiko asked. "It's the Navy. The Navy is here. Some survivors from Gosa managed to contact the government. The Navy's come here to pick us up, see?" the boy shouted as they joined a group on the shoreline staring off at a large Navy ship off of the coast. Naruto frowned as he saw another ship, the Arlong pirates vessel no less, begin closing in alongside the Navy vessel. He knew Arlong was likely still in his castle with the majority of his crew, but the fishmen had enough forces to crew their ship a couple times over. One of his officers was likely leading on it and sending them in to negotiate with the Navy. That ended when they opened fire with a shot toward the approaching ship, narrowly missing the ship and crew, but tearing holes through its mast. Naruto stood and watched as the fishermen responded with rapid and vicious attacks. They didn't even fire any cannons in response, instead diving into the water and boarding the Navy ship quickly. The sound of gunfire, clashing blades, and screaming could soon be heard as they echoed over the small inlet from the deck of the ships. Naruto narrowed his eyes as the water itself began to grow more agitated, and a whirlpool began to stir to life in front of the ship. "Fishmen are something else," Naruto idly commented, catching Najiko and the other civilians' attention. "What do you mean?" she asked. They are insanely strong, even more so in their natural element under the sea. One of them has torn the rudder off of the Navy ship, and they have changed the landscape under the water to affect the current. They made that whirlpool. This can't be happening. The little boy said as he fell to his knees. This is reality, there is no way we can escape from Arlong's control, Najiko responded, sounding defeated. Slowly the people filtered away from the shoreline, leaving only Naruto, who continued to watch as the whirlpool gradually stopped and the fishermen laughed and cheered on their ship. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a den mushi and called his partner. "Miss Valentine, I need a lift," he said before having to lean away from the snail as she screamed a response. Not some taxi. I've been waiting beside this damn snail all day long, and you call just asking for a lift," Makita yelled back. "Well, I want you to pick me up so we can have a bit of fun cracking some skulls together. I could always just swim though," Naruto replied. "Where are you at?" she huffed back in response. "I'll meet you in Gosa again, then I will tell you the plan," he answered. "Whatever, don't make me wait," the woman commanded before hanging up. So worked up, Naruto rolled his eyes, at least he could focus her on some targets here soon, so maybe she would be in a better mood. "Wait, that's it?" Makita whined. "Yeah, pretty much, I just want to make sure they won't be leaving the island." They used 2 docks, one at Arlong Park itself and another on the opposite side of the island, where they collect taxes from the various villages. "That was where I saw the ship headed, so we'll go smash it up," Naruto said as they approached the docks. "I'm really feeling like a glorified chauffeur right now," she complained. "Well, look at it this way, once we are there you can let all that anger out, plus this gets us closer to being done here, and afterward we come completely clean, then we can get dirty again." He whispered the last into her ear, with hot breath causing her to shiver lightly. Makita bit her lip but nodded, "Fine, but you best hurry up with whatever you are trying to do on the island. I may not be in the mood anymore if you take too long." "Right," Naruto replied with a sarcastic tone. "Okay, close enough, let's get going," Naruto said as he dropped down onto the smaller rowboat on the side of their ship and began paddling them over to the dock. It didn't take long before they drew up alongside the ship moored there, catching the attention of all the fishermen present. "Who the hell are you two?" one asked as he began pulling his knife from his belt. "It really doesn't matter," Naruto said before drawing his own sword in a quick flash and separating the man's hand from his arm. "What the hell?" another shouted, moving to attack until he was cracked across the head with a fist weighing over 500 pounds, turning him to pulp. The dock turned to chaos as Naruto and Makita crushed through them, smashing and slicing. Anytime they nearly got a blow in, Naruto simply hardened himself with armament hockey and shielded Makita. It was almost as easy as a normal band of pirates. "I thought fishmen were supposed to be tough to kill or something?" Miss Valentine asked as she pulled her shoes free of a dead man's chest. "They are, I think they just got a little too accustomed to life in the East Blue," Naruto said as he pulled the shirt off of a corpse to clean his sword. "Well, that was hardly fun, now what?" Makita asked. "Now head back to the ship, I'll scuttle this one and get a hold of you when I am done on the island," Naruto replied. "Oh no, you know what, fine, whatever, I'm going to take a nap," she said as she opened her umbrella and floated off back to the ship. Naruto turned back toward the Arlong pirate's ship, slowly walking to the front of the vessel. He lined himself up with the prow and pushed hockey into his sword before lifting it up over his head. With a sudden swing, he brought the blade down and split the ship almost in two. "Not quite though." "Damn, still not quite there, huh, next time for sure," he said before turning away from the massacre he and his partner had committed and heading back inland at a casual pace. He kind of wanted another tangerine from Najiko's orchard, they were far too good. "So now you know, they found Nami's map when they raided Koko-ashi. It actually worked out nicely. Had they found the map a little later they probably would have killed Bellemere, but instead they just beat her up real bad and drug her and Nami off to their castle." Najiko began to conclude her explanation to Zoro, Usopp, and Sanji. They roughed up Nami too, but she watched them kill 5 whole units of marines and sink their ships like it was nothing, so she agreed to Arlong's offer. She would draw sea charts and maps for him, and in return Nami would be able to buy the village back from Arlong for 100 million belly. To make sure she cooperated they keep Bellemere hostage in their castle, and to get her freedom it's another 60 million, Najiko finished. "It'll make anyone who makes my beloved Nami suffer," Sanji began, only to be clocked over the head by Najiko. "I told you, I came here to tell you to stop. If you cause a problem the pirates will grow suspicious of Nami and everything will have been for nothing, not to mention they'll hurt Bellemere," Najiko said. "We have to do something though," Usopp argued, pushing past his normally cowardly traits. "You can, by staying out of the way. Tell that Naruto guy to stay out of the way too if you see him. Nami is so close, don't mess this up for her, or us," Najiko stated. The boys shared looks and looked back at Najiko, slowly coming to a decision. Naruto watched with narrowed eyes from back in the tangerine orchard as the village representative Genzo led a group of marines to the house. He had a rough idea of why they were there, but he would wait to let it play out a bit before he got involved. Just like with everything else in regards to these people, he knew they were working to achieve their freedom on their own. Even if he thought it was shitty how they were all leaving it on the shoulders of one little family. He wasn't sure, but he felt that it was about time to really step in. He had told both girls he would stay out of it for now, but while he might have told them it would be a shame if they would die, he wasn't going to just let that happen either. He watched on as Nami confronted the group outside her home, the frown already on his face deepened as his suspicions proved to be all but confirmed as the leader of the Marines spoke. "Are you the girl thief known as Nami?" he asked. "Our information has it that you have hidden treasure you have stolen from pirates. The government hereby confiscates all of that stolen property." The area became silent as Nami stared back at the colonel and Genzo looked shocked. He clearly hadn't known their intentions. "What's the matter, did you not hear me? The government hereby takes possession of everything you stole from the pirates," the man repeated. "You're very passionate about your duties, I see. You're not brave enough to stand up to pirates, so you deal with sneak thieves instead to earn brownie points." Nami seemed smug as she spoke. "Listen up, I'm a leader of the Arlong pirates, so he won't sit by quietly if you mess with me. Silly girl, do you think you're dealing with me on equal footing? Men, find the stolen goods," he ordered his troops. Nami refused though, and in a fluid motion, surprising Naruto and the other men, she assembled her bow staff and struck two marines, knocking them unconscious. She began laying into the colonel, hollering at him and reprimanding him about doing nothing about the Arlong pirates while coming after her for being a thief. "Colonel, this tangerine orchard seems suspicious," one of the men called out as they ignored Nami entirely. "Dig it up," he simply commanded. "Keep your dirty hands off of Bellamir's orchard," Nami said as she knocked down another marine. "Just leave her alone. That money is meant to save Koko-ashi village," Genzo shouted. Nami froze at that and looked over at the man. He sighed as he realized he couldn't hide it anymore. He gave Nami a sad look before explaining. "That day, when you came back from Arlong Park, I knew something was going on. I talked to Najiko afterward and she told me everything that you planned. The whole village has known this entire time," Genzo explained. But Nami began. "We unfairly pinned all our hopes on your plan, but pretended we felt betrayed by you. We wanted to leave you out, so that if you chose to just run away someday you wouldn't feel regret. You never did though. All this time, 8 years you endured and we watched on and refused to be there for you." Genzo was nearly in tears as the guilt of their plan washed over him. So what you're saying is the entire village are thieves and should all be arrested," the colonel laughed, not taking the situation seriously at all. "What he is saying is that each and every one of us is fighting to live, but only because we can't rely on any of your government people," Najiko called out as she began storming over the hill. "If you're not going to save our village, then get the hell out of here. Dilly-dally and Arlong will go after your ship too." "Arlong will, huh? I wouldn't be too sure," the colonel hollered. "You lot, it's 160 million belly, not a grain of rice." "Wait, how do you know how much there is?" Genzo asked. The others in the clearing slowly realized just what the colonel had let slip. Arlong, Nami hissed as she realized the reality of her situation. "Colonel, I found it," one of the men shouted. The officer quickly headed over along with the rest of the marines and stopped at the buried box. With a snap of his fingers, the troops quickly got to work digging up the entire box. Before pulling it out of the ground, the Navy man dropped to his knees and pried off the lid. He nearly began salivating at the sight of so much gold and money saved up. "I'm impressed you could gather this much, girl," the colonel said as he played with the coins in his hands. "It's all rugged and stained with blood," one of the marines observed. "Who cares, money is money," the colonel said. Nami began breathing heavily and her pupils dilated as she began approaching the marines again. "Don't touch that, don't touch that, don't touch that," she screamed as she ran right toward the colonel. Unlike earlier when he simply ignored it as she assaulted his men, the officer was not about to stand by and allow himself to be brutalized. He drew out a pistol, taking aim to shoot the girl as she charged forward. Najiko and Genzo did their best to try and stop her. The gun went off, but everyone blinked as they saw Naruto tightly gripping the colonel's wrist and holding the pistol up into the air. "This is getting to be annoying to watch, so everyone here, listen up, you sniveling little marine shit, fuck off," Naruto said calmly, clenching his hand and snapping the colonel's wrist easily. "You three, take your money into the house. I will be there to talk with you soon, and the rest of you marines. If you don't take your boss here and fuck off like I said, I will fertilize this wold orchard with your corpses." The men hesitated briefly, but their commander howled in pain, so they grabbed him and hauled him off back toward town. Naruto stood and watched them as they went to make sure they didn't come back. He was happy to see the Navy ship begin to depart within a few minutes. It was so nice when people actually listened to him without causing a fuss. Now though he needed to talk with the family inside, they really needed to be lectured about their planning skills. Fuck him, it was bad. Striding into the house, he settled into a seat, the same one he had been in previously in fact, and took a moment to look each of them over. They were all in decent shape, in fact the only relatively fresh injury was on Nami's hand. "Hello again," Naruto said with a small smile. The trio glanced at one another before Najiko stepped forward. "Thanks for that, one of us could have died, and you helped us save this money so that we." "It doesn't matter, does it?" Nami suddenly said. Naruto looked at the youngest girl's eyes, they were so hollow and grief-stricken, it felt wrong to see what happened to her. He really had a bone to pick with the villagers for their stupid plan that they had consigned to. "I really think your villagers are dumb, Genzo, putting all the weight of this situation on the backs of one family, or more like on one little girl growing up. Look at that money she brought back, how much of that blood is hers I wonder," Naruto said, looking down at the man. Genzo trembled in rage and shame, but was shocked as Nami reached up to slap Naruto, only for him to catch her hand. He twisted it around to look at the red-stained bandages before sighing. "I recognize that style of a dressed wound. Marines, your mom is something else, huh? Still, you cracking those marine skulls earlier opened this back up. We better go get it checked out," Naruto said simply. He then held the door open as the trio awkwardly walked out. They quickly came back to the village, catching Luffy's attention from where he sat against a tree. The villagers began to gather as Genzo called for the doctor. Stopping at a market stand, the people began to slowly gather as the doctor began looking over Nami's hand. "What happened?" "We saw the colonel and his men hightail it through here a little bit ago," the doctor asked. "They tried to grab Nami's hidden money. Arlong's been working with the navy all along," Genzo said, causing the villagers to grow angry at the lie. "That bastard never intended to keep his word," Naruto commented. "What?" one of the members of the crowd demanded. "He lied to Arnachin," another growled. Naruto eyed Nami carefully as she tensed up. He knew that she had wanted to carry the burden all alone, so no one, especially Bellemere, would be hurt by Arlong anymore. As she stood up, pulling her away from the worried doctor. Before she could say anything though, Luffy suddenly jumped into the group, happy to see his friend. "Hey Nami, what's up, need help with anything?" Luffy asked. Naruto turned to look the boy over. So this was him, Monkey D, Luffy, the one who ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi, the one his dad lost his arm for and gave up his last reminder of his time in the Roger Pirates. He seemed unnaturally joyful, and despite looking unassuming, Naruto was smart enough not to judge a book by its cover. After all, if his father was certain Luffy was going to be making big waves in the world, Naruto wanted to see him at the start of his journey. Right now though, he seemed to be watching a fight between friends. "You're still here?" Nami demanded as she glared at him before snatching up the boy's collar. "This has nothing to do with you. Leave the damned island already." She then threw Luffy to the ground and attempted to run off before being caught by the arm by Naruto. She tried to yank herself free, but the older man kept a tight hold of her before pushing her into her sister's arms. "Calm down, running off to Arlong Park won't accomplish anything but getting you or your mom killed," Naruto said, causing her to stop fighting to leave again. "No more of this, all of you take up your arms. Let's fight." Genzo rallied his people. "Hold on there, you're all forgetting something," Naruto said. "Yeah? All of you stop. If you fight back they'll hurt Bellemere." Najiko shouted at the others. They all began murmuring among one another as they realized the girl was right. Naruto sighed as he watched the sisters cry, and the villagers quickly deflated as their hopes seemed to evaporate. However, the leader of the villagers didn't waver, not this time. "We can't keep holding back, we have to try and rescue her then," Genzo said, riling up the villagers once again. 8 years ago we swore we would fight the patient fight. We have no hope now. Arlong took advantage of our Nami. They beat and held our Bellemere hostage, and they mocked and berated our Najiko, and we stood by and did nothing. Now though it's time we fight back." Genzo bellowed, getting a roar of agreement from the crowd. "No. Everyone, wait." Nami cried out, standing up to face the villagers. "I am so close to earning the last of the money. The Marines didn't steal it, so I'm really close to having all that we need to buy our village and get Bellemere back. Just be patient a little longer, and this will all be over. Arlong is reasonable." Nami tried to convince them, only for Genzo to pull her into a hug as she began to shake in his arms. "You can stop now, even you know that there's no point now, you fought very well, carrying all our lives on your back all this time, joining them must have been even more painful for you than being cut through the heart, you fought very well." Genzo comforted her. She pulled back and drew her knife. "No. I won't let you go, please. I don't want anyone else to get hurt by them." She slowly lost her fire as tears began to run down her face. "You'll die, you know." "We know," Genzo replied simply. "Now get out of our way, Nami, even if we can't win, we'll fight." The crowd roared and began sprinting past them toward Arlong Park, causing Naruto to quickly glance between the various people remaining. He sighed as he saw Nami collapse to her knees. The look in her eyes was miserable, and Naruto could barely stand the sight of her. Well then, he said before taking off after the villagers, he won't stop them if they wanted to fight, but removing the leverage the fishmen were holding over them all was leveling the playing field in his mind. He passed by the rest of Luffy's apparent crew as they waited for their leader's decision. No doubt they would be heading to fight Arlong and his remaining crew shortly. That meant Naruto had best move fast if he wanted to have this Bellemere out of there before the real fight began. Stopping outside the walls of Arlong Park, Naruto took in the scene of the villagers having stopped their charge in front of two badly beaten swordsmen sitting in front of the gates of Arlong's base. It was odd, but it was good that the people were stopped from doing something stupid and charging to their deaths. Naruto turned and walked away from the gates around the back wall, looking at the best ways to get into the compound. A few trees were close, so if he climbed up them he could land on the other side of the wall with a strong jump. As he scaled and jumped for it, he was a bit surprised by the fact no guards seemed to surround Bellemere and Nami's room. As a loud crash and rumble sounded across the region, he peeked over the edge of the building to see what was happening. What he saw brought a grin to his face. Luffy stood on top of a pile of rubble that had previously been the gate to Arlong's castle, having clearly smashed it down with his bare hands. Now that is more like it, Naruto said with a grin as he popped the door off its hinges with ease. Inside, Bellemere blinked in surprise, wondering what was going on, first the explosion outside and then her door being ripped off its hinges. "Who the hell are you?" she asked. "Ah, you are definitely their mother," Naruto said with a smirk. "You know my girls?" she asked warily. "Yep, now come on, time to head out and meet them," Naruto said. He then smoothly tossed the older woman onto his shoulder, getting a surprisingly girlish yelp as he leapt from the balcony to the top of the wall. Precariously balancing there for a moment, he then hopped down and casually walked over toward the gathered crowd of villagers who had still yet to notice them. Their attention was too taken up by the spectacle unfolding before them as the Straw Hats began the fight with Arlong and his crew. "They're not human," Negico replied. "Yeah, I'd be surprised at the level a human can reach," Naruto said as he sat Bellemere down beside her daughter, causing the villagers to gasp and nearly dogpile the woman in joy. "Bellemere, you're free," Negico sobbed as she clung to her mother. "Yeah, it was thanks to this guy," the Redeed said pointing at Naruto, who simply relaxed and watched as the Straw Hats fought. Even as the supposed sea monster of the Arlong pirates arrived and turned tail to flee upon seeing the crew, the villagers focused on Bellemere. Naruto, though, was having a blast watching the show. He saw it, at least a glimpse of it. Whatever his dad knew was in Luffy, the kid was something else. As the sea monster turned back at the command of its master, Luffy simply responded by planting his feet into the concrete and grabbing the massive beast and spinning around to launch it away through the sky and proceeded to call Arlong out. By now the townsfolk had returned their attention to the events within Arlong Park and were stunned by what they were seeing. Naruto snorted as the rubber man realized he was stuck, but nodded in approval as his crew members proved why they had been chosen to join his group. "They're all so strong," Bellemere said in shock. "Negico, are they?" "Yeah, they're Nami's friends," Negico nodded. "I see," the woman said with a fond smile spreading onto her lips. The pace of the battle changed suddenly as the concrete Luffy was in was broken off and hurled into the water. Realizing the danger for the boy and his crew, Naruto started stepping forward. "All of you stay here," he commanded before diving underwater and smashing the concrete around Luffy's feet apart and carrying him back up to the shore. He pressed all of the water out of the kid in a motion more resembling wringing out a rag than pushing water out of his lungs. Luffy sputtered and coughed before catching his breath and blinking up at him. "Hey, you kind of look familiar," he said as he tilted his head to the side. "Yeah, I'm Naruto, you saw me in Koko-ashi village earlier," Naruto replied. "Oh, okay," Luffy accepted his answer. "Listen, you best get up there and kick Arlong's ass already. You promised you would help your friend, right? She means a lot to those folks watching over there, so you need to make a statement," Naruto said. "You don't need to tell me," Luffy said simply as he made his way back into the compound. "Oi. Sanji, Zoro, I am the one fighting Arlong," Luffy said as he stepped back in. The older boys glanced at one another before stepping aside to let their captain at the opposing captain. Before Luffy could begin battling the fishmen though, a sharp voice cut across the area, causing the fighting pirates and villagers all to turn to see Nami standing just outside the group, glaring darkly over at the fishmen. "Oh, Nami, what are you doing here?" Arlong said with a smirk. "I'm here to help kill you," she replied. "Really? I'll tell you what, I need you, your skills are what will let me build the Arlong Empire like I wanted, so since I can't kill you, I'll just kill everyone else here, but you," the fishman said with a chuckle. "Just shut the hell up," Luffy demanded, launching into his attack and starting the fight. The rest stood back and watched with Naruto gently laying a hand on Nami's shoulder to comfort her. "Your crew won't let Arlong win, he isn't going to harm anyone else here," Naruto said. It was brutal. A few times the Straw Hats began to step forward to support Luffy, only to be ordered back by the young captain. They even had to back up out of the compound's walls, as the entire complex was gradually reduced to rubble as it escalated more and more, eventually culminating with Luffy bringing the building down on top of Arlong. As he stood on top of the ruins he had created, he bellowed out his promise that Nami was his friend. Slowly the fact that Luffy won began to settle into the hearts and minds of the audience. One by one, they seemed to repeat the simple phrase that he won. Smiling, Naruto simply slipped away and drew out his Den Mushi to call for his pickup. "I can't wait to see what else you get up to out there, Monkey D. Luffy," Naruto thought as he heard his partner's agitated voice on the other end of the connection answer his call. As promised, once done with everything, Naruto had come clean with Makita. To say she was stunned was an understatement. It would have been a huge reveal to learn he was the son of a Yonko, or to simply learn he was formerly part of the Revolutionary Army and still help them. To learn he was a full-on traitor to the Baroque Works organization was just another mental slap the poor woman had to endure. Still, she seemed to do so rather well, taking a few moments to process it all before agreeing to help him with his plans and infiltration of Baroque Works. "Now can we finally get back to more pleasurable activities?" she asked him, causing Naruto to smirk. "Oh, for sure," he replied, only for her to press a finger to his lips. "We both need showers and cleaned up first. I am going first." Makita slipped out of bed and down the hall of the ship. Once out of earshot, Makita began to panic and fumbled for her communication snail, making the connection as quickly as possible. She was breathing heavily and nearly yelped when she heard the voice on the other end. "Miss Valentine. What's the issue?" Miss All Sunday asked. I need to report, my partner Mr. 5 is actually the son of Red Hair Shanks. Naruto has a spy for the Revolutionary Army and is plotting against the organization," she said in a hushed tone. There was silence on the line for a long moment before Miss All Sunday replied, "Are you certain?" "Yes." Makita hissed. "I see, where is he now?" she asked. "In the other room, I told him I was going to go shower," Miss Valentine explained. "Alright, go shower, then pretend that nothing has changed, go along with him, and we will ambush him when you get back to Alabasta," the organization's second-in-command said. "Alright, that sounds like a good plan," Makita said, reassuring herself. "Remember to act natural," the other woman pressed. "I will," Makita said. "Good, I need to tell the boss and get others in position. I will contact you later with details," Miss All Sunday explained. "Okay," the connection went silent after that. Miss Valentine realized she forgot to grab her clothes though and went to grab them while trying her best to act natural. As she drew closely though, she heard the ring of the Den Mushi that Naruto kept on his person at all times go off before overhearing him answer it. "Robin," Naruto said, sounding pleasantly surprised. "We have a problem," the voice responded, causing Makita's eyes to widen in horror as she recognized the voice. It was Miss All Sunday. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Miss Valentine tried to warn me about you, she isn't an ally," Robin replied, causing Makita to begin backing away from the door until she accidentally bumped into the wall. Naruto was silent as he slowly turned to face the doorway, seeing Makita standing just outside. He had a sad expression on his face, but a determined look in his eyes as he sighed. "I see, I'll call you back in a little bit," Naruto said before hanging up his call. Makita was terrified. She knew he had held back in every fight she'd seen, but even then he was far out of her league. No one was coming to help her either. "I really wish you hadn't done that, Makita, I really did like you," he said sadly. The woman tried to run, but didn't get far as a chain of sea stone whipped out and wrapped around her throat and pulled her back into the room. Fear swelled in her eyes as Naruto towered over her. "It'll make it as painless as I can," he said, grabbing his sword off of the counter next to him. Practically from the moment Naruto had returned to Alabasta, he had known things were going to be annoying. There hadn't been many officer agents to have been killed by those outside the organization. Baroque Works was funny like that, a lot more dangerous for its own people than the enemies they faced usually were. That was a problem right now though. Not only was it rare for them to come up against a target or enemy that could go toe-to-toe with them, in the East Blue it was all but impossible. Naruto had an inkling that the Straw Hat crew broke that mold, but he wasn't about to give Crocodile more reasons to be interested in the crew, especially when they were just starting out. That might be hard though, being as the cover story he and Robin were planning to use was that Arlong had killed Makita while she was being careless. Relax, he'll buy the story, especially if you tell him you wounded Arlong, but he managed to get away. It downplays that pirate crew's involvement as well that way, Robin, or rather Miss All Sunday assured him. "I know, still I would rather he have no interest in the Straw Hats, at least not yet," Naruto replied. "I have to say I am a little bit confused by your actions in regards to them, staying out of their way and even helping them out a bit. What is you so worried about them? What exactly is your connection?" Robin asked. So curious, like always. Initially I wanted to see what my father found intriguing about the captain of the crew, Naruto said, causing Robin's eyes to widen at the fact Red Hair Shanks was interested in this crew as well. After watching for a bit though, I get it a little bit. I think if you saw them in person too you'd be even more interested in them than I am, Naruto continued. Robin was silent for a little bit as they continued to walk. She wondered if that was true. She hadn't really felt much interest in other people outside of her present company since she was a child, her mind almost exclusively centered on the poneglyphs and what secrets they held. I guess we had best get this shit over with, Naruto grumbled unhappily as he looked up at the large door before them. Relax, if you are too worked up he might grow suspicious, Robin reminded him. Right, he sighed before motioning for Robin to lead the way. The woman did just that, taking him down the long halls to meet with Crocodile himself, something Naruto had yet to do. There was always some separation between Crocodile or Mr. Zero and the rest of the organization. When they stepped into the office and Crocodile sat at a ridiculously oversized table, Naruto played up surprise at one of the warlords running the show, something that had Robin sending small approving nod toward him as Crocodile grinned from the shocked and awed reaction from Naruto. Why all the secrecy? Would the government get upset with you running Baroque works? Naruto asked, not that he actually cared much for the answer, but playing up his confusion worked in their favor. Crocodile ignored the question for one of his own, how exactly did your old partner die Mr. 5? Naruto's eyes narrowed at the obvious accusation, what do you mean? Didn't Miss All Sunday give you my report? Oh she did, but I'm wondering what is true and false in the whole thing. I mean your report says that Arlong killed Miss Valentine and that you wounded him, but he managed to escape just to get off by some nobodies in the East Blue. Kind of makes me wonder just how strong you are supposed to be if some has been hiding in the weakest sea beat you, Crocodile growled like his namesake. He didn't beat me, he ran away from me. I think it's saying something about the damage I did to the bastard if some punk kid and his crew finished him off, Naruto argued. Crocodile stared over at Naruto, his eyes were worryingly intelligent, as Naruto had expected, still the warlord's suspicion wasn't making Naruto's plans easier. Say that I believe you, what am I supposed to do with you now? Your partner is dead, I know the two of you were a little bit more than just working partners too, Crocodile revealed, causing Naruto's eyes to widen in actual shock. He schooled his features quickly though and went on the offensive. I figured you would probably give me a new partner, maybe someone nice and cute like Miss Valentine was, she was a lot of fun between missions, Naruto said. He wasn't totally lying, but maybe he could get Crocodile to leave him without a partner if her thought Naruto was just going to try and get in their panties, that way Naruto wouldn't have another person looking over his shoulder all the time. That had been why he wanted to bring Makita into his plans in the first place. We don't really have anyone ready for advancement that I am aware of, at least no one I would want to pair with you, Mr. 5, Crocodile said. Something temporary then? Robin interjected. Oh? You have an idea? Crocodile asked. Just a temporary solution until a new officer agent is available. I will keep an eye on him and he can lend me a hand with some of our missions, Miss All Sunday said. Crocodile hummed at that idea. She had mentioned needing a partner in the past, and as little as he trusted in Robin herself, he did trust her to keep working toward Baroque Works' goal. As it moved her closer to her own goal, it would keep a good eye on Mr. 5, who he knew was hiding things from him, as well as lend some extra muscle to the important tasks he entrusted to Miss All Sunday. Alright, that works for now, I want you to keep an eye on him though, understood, Sunday? He asked. Perfectly, she replied. Good, then with that out of the way, I want you to perform another surprise inspection of Whiskey Peak soon. The princess and that lummox of a bodyguard she has still think they have us fooled. The closer we get to our endgame, the more likely they are to make a move, so keep close on them for a while, Crocodile ordered. Alright, Robin said with a bored shrug of her shoulders, come Mr. 5, I'll fill you in on the situation as we go. But that the two of them left Crocodile behind as they returned to the outside, Robin and Naruto made some idle chatter, as Naruto was already completely aware of the situation surrounding Vivi Nefertari. Neither planned on letting the girl come to harm, but they did plan to make it look good until the perfect time to wreck Baroque Works came. So, off to Whiskey Peak? Naruto asked. Yes, Banshee will take us, she said, causing Naruto to grin at the thought of the giant turtle. Sweet, I love that thing, with his little cowboy hat and cigar, Naruto laughed. Those were my idea, he's cuter now with a little costume and he and I can match, Robin said playfully as she adjusted her own cowboy-style hat. Naruto chuckled again at the mental image of Robin finding a hat big enough for the giant turtle, then he broke into full laughter at the idea of her trying to teach the creature to smoke. I'm glad it entertains you so much, Robin said with an amused grin. Well yeah, how did you get him to start smoking? Naruto asked. Oh, it wasn't that hard, the trick was just getting him to stop eating them, she explained, causing Naruto to snort at the thought again. Come on, hell take us straight there so we might as well grab some food and drinks for the trip, Robin pointed out as she motioned toward a small shop. Sounds like a plan, Naruto grinned. A few hours later, Robin and Naruto were enjoying a surprisingly relaxing picnic on the back of Banshee the turtle. Robin had enjoyed Naruto's childish reaction to getting to use the turtle for transport. She supposed it was a bit fun to have the animal carrying them, and the attire she had trained him to wear along with the cigar took that even further. They lounged on his back eating some cheap sandwiches from an Anohana-based shop and occasionally enjoying a cocktail Naruto mixed up from the ingredients he had in a small cooler. "So you spent time as a bartender then?" Robin asked. "Nah, my dad was just kind of relaxed with the idea of my sisters and I drinking. We like to try new drinks, so it just kind of happened that I developed a skill with it," Naruto responded with a shrug. Tell me about your family," she requested. Naruto hummed for a moment contemplating it before slowly nodding. "I know you are an orphan, Robin, but tell me about yours in exchange," Naruto said. "Why?" she asked, genuinely confused by the request. "I dunno, I guess I just want to get to know you better. I mean, why did you ask about mine?" he replied. Robin was quiet as she thought about why she wanted to know. She couldn't honestly say why she wanted to know more about his family and him in general. The best she could do was chalk it up to the fact she was a curious person and he and his family were interesting people. After all, the head of their family was a Yonko. "Alright, you make a good point. I asked you first though, so you go," Robin said. Naruto smiled faintly at that before humming and thought on how to describe his family. He almost snorted in amusement at the first adjectives to come to his mind. Best not to scare the woman off. He was still hoping to convince her to travel with him when they were done with Crocodile and Alabasta. That would come in time though. For now he had best stop stalling. "Honestly, you will laugh, but for the most part we're a pretty normal family," Naruto said. He broke into laughter at the disbelieving stare he got in return from the blue-eyed beauty. Okay, maybe not that normal. Still, my mom and dad both did their best to make sure we all got the chance to be normal kids, or as close as one gets, well, among the crew of Yonko. I mean, they trained us a lot, like a crazy amount, now that I think about it, but they did that so that we could survive in this world," Naruto said. "Makes sense, people from all over would be after Yonko's child," Robin agreed. She blinked in surprise when Naruto snorted. "You would think so, right? My parents did too. Turns out the opposite is true. People see you and run in the opposite direction. Was pretty annoying when my sister and I set out to try and see the world. Had to join the Revolutionary Army to even really get into any good fights. It helped we shared some ideals with them, sure, but between you and me. I know Kushina only joined up so she could test herself finally," Naruto explained. "Your sister sounds a bit wild," Robin pointed out. "You nailed that one. She's always been the most brash of the family." Naruto trailed off at the surprised look he was getting from Robin. "What? It's true. She's way worse than I am," Naruto declared. "That's kind of scary," she said as a small smile spread onto her face. "Ah, sure, well, tell me about your family," Naruto urged. "No, you haven't really told me anything about yours yet. Keep going," Robin said with her amused grin still in place. Naruto clicked his teeth in annoyance but gave in. He saw her point after all. "Alright, well, you probably know plenty about my parents. They aren't bloodthirsty reavers like the government makes them out to be. You of all people know how the government is," Naruto said, mercifully ignoring the wince his partner showed at that. My elder sister Kushina has her own crew. I think my two little sisters have signed up with her in my place too. My dad says that she and I are really similar, except that Kushina is a bit more wild. The other two are pretty reckless too. I hope her crew keeps them all under control," Naruto said, while mentally laughing at that thought, as if. "I don't really know much about your two little sisters," Robin pointed out. "Oh yeah, most people don't. Mom did a pretty good job at keeping them out of the public eye, unlike Kushina and me. Let's see, Taiya is the older one. She's a devil fruit user and she's pretty mean. Mom is always complaining about her lack of manners, saying stuff like how did I go wrong, that kind of stuff. I think she does most of it out of habit now because she used to do it just to rile up Mom and Kushina," Naruto explained. "Now, the youngest of us is Karen. She is motley like Mom and Kushina, I guess. She can be all proper and cunning and stuff like Mom most of the time, but she has a short fuse like Kushina does." Naruto smiled as he recalled his siblings and parents. He missed them, but he knew that they would catch up whenever he made his way back over to that side of the globe again. "Your family sounds like a lot of fun. I think most people imagine some sort of evil blood-sucking monsters when they think of the Yonkos and their kids," Robin joked. Yeah, probably. Dad hardly does any actual pirating anymore. He has some territories and collects protection, but most just sits around and relaxes with Mom and his crew, like they are waiting for something, kinda," Naruto admitted, causing Robin to gain an intrigued glint in her eyes. "Now then, no more avoiding it. I know that for you, talking about your family is kind of hard for you, but I can't help but want to know," Naruto gently prodded. Robin was quiet as she swirled the last of her cocktail around. She knew she might as well. She hadn't really been this close with someone, well, truth be told, she didn't think she ever had. Naruto had a way of worming his way into your emotions though. It was endearing as it was bothersome, so. After lifting the glass to her lips and draining it down, she nodded and returned the empty glass to the little cooler Naruto had brought with him. Fine, truthfully I didn't really know my parents all that much. I think my father died before I was even born or maybe just afterward. I don't even know his name. As for my mother, she left me with my uncle and aunt on Ohara while she went on expeditions. Robin hesitated there, and Naruto narrowed his eyes, not at her, but at the way she paused at the thought of her aunt and uncle. They weren't very good people, were they? Naruto asked. Robin didn't give any indication she had heard him, simply moving on with her explanation. That was enough of a confirmation for Naruto though. When the Navy destroyed Ohara, my mother had just returned from her trips, and we met briefly before she and everyone else on the island was killed. The Navy even destroyed the ship carrying all the townsfolk off of the island. They didn't even have anything to do with she disliked even speaking the term. Buster Call, Naruto quietly finished, causing Robin to flinch. Yes, they called it because they wanted to wipe out the tree of knowledge on the island, essentially a giant library, and a group of scholars studying the void century and poneglyphs, she commented. The atmosphere of the conversation had darkened considerably from when they spoke of Naruto's family. So that's where you learned to read the poneglyphs. What on earth were they doing teaching a little girl about something like that? Naruto asked, trying to brighten the mood. Robin chuckled weakly. It was a start at least. I'll have you know I passed an exam to be officially recognized by them as a member when I was 8. Naruto blinked in surprise at that. I'm sorry, but 8. You heard me, and I didn't stutter or anything, she said with a small smile. That's pretty amazing. You're something else, Naiko Robin, I have to say, Naruto said with a chuckle. I'll take that as a compliment, she replied with an amused glance toward him. Oh, it most definitely was. Truth be told, I think you are probably the most interesting person I've met in my life, Naruto said flippantly, but his words caught her off guard. I mean, I rub elbows with warlords and yonkos, meet revolution leaders and square off with Navy officers all the time. Who would have thought an archaeologist would be the one with the most interesting story to tell? Naruto continued on, causing Robin to blush ever so slightly, so faintly it was unnoticeable to anyone beside herself. I don't know about all that. I mean, for the most part all my interesting aspects come from being the demon child of Ohara, she said with a shrug. Ah, don't tell me you buy into the government's propaganda about yourself. I mean, you really are giving yourself way too little credit, Naruto commented. Naruto, this is the first time I have even really sat down and spoken with someone about all this, and I have been on the run since Ohara fell 20 years ago, she began. So? I mean, you really do give yourself too little credit. You don't fool me. You jumped at the chance to pull a fast one on Crocodile and have been planning a way to undermine his plans for Alabasta since we made our pact. Not only that, but I've seen you play up your calm and collected, cold-hearted assassin look. That's not really you can do what has to be done. But you are a kind person underneath that mask, Naruto said, causing Robin to shift uncomfortably at his rant about her. She wasn't sure how to feel about his opinion about her, and she wondered how much of what he said was true. She couldn't really tell where the mask he pointed out began and ended after 2 decades of wearing it. The two sat in silence as Naruto realized had probably overstepped their current limits. He focused on finishing his own drink and putting everything away before he stared over at the woman who slowly turned to stare back at him. Sorry if I came on a bit strong there, I still think all of that is true though, Naruto apologized. No, it's fine, I just don't really know how to take all that whatever it was in, she tried to ease the awkward air. Naruto nodded at that. It was fair, it was a bit too involved for his own taste as well. He considered Robin more of a friend than simply colleague by this point, even if they were a bit distant at times, still they were both relying on each other pretty heavily to achieve their own goals. You never have told me what you plan after you read what's on the poneglyph in Alabasta by the way, Naruto commented. Robin slowly nodded, before shrugging her shoulders. I imagine it will send me looking for the next one and the next one after that, and so on and so forth, at least until I find the last one. Well, that's straightforward, Naruto commented. Robin chuckled lightly at his dull response. Well, I will probably go along with whatever takes my interest between interpreting the poneglyphs, who knows where that will take me. Naruto nodded, he understood that. I'm probably going to do the same. I don't really want to return to my dad or sister's cruise. I don't exactly know what I want to do either, so I'll just roll with it for now. Kind of jealous that I don't have a big dream like you though. You are still young. I'm sure you'll find what you want out on the sea somewhere, Robin reassured him. I'm not that much younger than you, Naruto pouted, causing her to laugh at the face he made. I know, but that doesn't change what I said at all, Robin reaffirmed. Naruto clicked his teeth before standing and stretching. Whiskey Peak was in sight now. I guess it's about time to work, Naruto said as bent side to side. It seems that way, looks like they have another ship pulling into their little port, Robin sighed as she pointed out the ship. Ah, how's it they managed to con so many idiots into stopping there? That whole gag with the party and getting the pirates drunk is so stupid, but it still works, Naruto laughed. I think it has something to do with the shock of people celebrating pirates, it throws crews that are new to the Grand Line for a loop and they become easy prey, she explained her reasoning. Makes as much sense as any other reason. Wait a minute, no fucking way. Naruto shouted as he took in the appearance of the ship. What is it? Robin asked. It happens to be the Going Merry, the ship I saw the Strawats using when I was leaving Koko-ashi village, Naruto grumbled. Robin became more interested in the ship docked at the Baroque Works outpost and hummed. Naruto had told her everything he knew about the Straw Hats and what he had seen at the island when they had fought Arlong and his fishermen pirates. She couldn't lie, the thought of encountering them herself was pretty appealing. That being said, becoming involved with Princess Vivi or her bodyguard could be an issue. It might also cause problems for her and Naruto's own plans, which meant they were either going to have to drive them off or reorganize their own plans. What are you thinking? She asked her partner. Naruto had been thinking along very similar lines to Robin as he realized what he had set in motion for Alabasta was going to be put in jeopardy if the princess was making actual moves of her own. The plan wasn't shot yet, still he doubted the princess would pass up the opportunity for dragging Luffy and his crew into things if she found out how unlike the average pirate they were. Let's see what's going on first. If we try and run them off, it will just have the opposite effect. That being said, if Nefertari hasn't already truly allied with them, they might just go on their way, Naruto explained. What if the agents there kill them? Robin asked and Naruto snorted. I doubt that will happen. If anything, we might have to play up fighting against them to push them how we want them to go, Naruto answered. Robin eyed him, knowing his brain was spinning up some crazy plan. She had to wonder briefly why it was she partnered with him when she knew how he worked. She knew the answer. Just as he had said she was the most interesting person he had met, she couldn't help but want to watch him in action as well. He was just as interesting in her eyes. This might actually help us out too, if we play our cards right and get a big helping of luck somewhere down the line, Naruto finally said. So what do you want to do? Robin asked. Like I said, we'll wait for a moment till the party dies down at least, then we'll hop into things ourselves. Might have to come up with things on the fly though, Naruto said with a smile. I had a feeling that was your preferred scenario anyway, Robin returned his smile with a smaller but no less amused one of her own. Going with the flow hasn't done me wrong yet, he replied before hopping off of Banshee's back and moving off to a secluded vantage point to watch over the town. Robin chuckled and followed after him. Thanks for watching.